The office buzzed with tension, the kind of nervous energy that builds before something big. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, half-empty coffee cups littered every desk. But my desk? It was spotless. I had been preparing for this day for months. At 9:15 sharp, my boss, Alan, strolled past my cubicle. His perfectly pressed suit, his smug grin. It was like he owned the air around him. He stopped at my desk, tapped twice on the surface without looking at me, and said casually, "You've got the slides ready for the client pitch, right?" I nodded. "All done. I sent them over this morning." Alan glanced at his watch. "Good. I'll handle the client meeting. You probably wouldn't be convincing enough anyway." His words hit like a slap. Smoothly delivered, almost like an afterthought, but sharp enough to leave a sting. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Not the first time. Definitely not the last. For 3 months, I'd been working day and night on this project. 12-hour days, weekends. I designed the product roadmap, built the prototype, handled the data modeling, and wrote the technical documents. Every word on those slides was mine. And yet, Alan was taking the lead. Again. This wasn't new. Alan had a habit of managing upwards, taking credit for his team's work while throwing just enough crumbs to avoid getting caught. He didn't understand the product, the technology, or even the client's real needs. But he was charming and loud. Loud often wins, at least temporarily. I remember the conversation a week earlier, when I first realized exactly what kind of person he was. I had just wrapped up a demo for the internal review. Alan leaned against the conference table, arms crossed. "Nice work, Emma," he said, nodding at the screen. "You've really polished this." For a brief second, I smiled. It felt good to be recognized. Then he added, "You know, for someone who isn't exactly leadership material, you surprised me." The smile vanished. "Excuse me?" I asked. Alan waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "Don't take it personally. You're a great worker bee, just not exactly client-facing or executive level." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just watched him. And in that moment, something shifted. Something clicked. Fast forward to today. 10 a.m. The conference room was already set. Our biggest prospective client in 5 years, Dawson Tech, was dialing in. Multi-million-dollar contract on the line. Alan grabbed the printouts of my slides off the printer. Didn't even thank me. Then he turned, looked me straight in the eye, and said the words that would define this entire story. "Stay here. I'll handle the client meeting. You're not good enough for this one." And just like that, he walked out. I stood there, fingers pressed against the edge of my desk, jaw tight. My pulse hammered in my ears. For a second, my vision blurred. Not from sadness, not even from anger, but from focus. Because Alan had no idea what I had done. The thing about being treated like you're invisible is that people forget you're always watching. Alan had barely skimmed the deck I prepared. He never read the appendix. He skipped the technical brief entirely, and what he didn't realize was that the final 3 slides, critical ones, were intentionally blank placeholders, marked as to be filled in during the demo. Placeholders for answers only I had, because I knew the client would ask. It wasn't even a guess. It was certainty. Dawson Tech had flagged the same concern during every previous vendor meeting. Security scalability. A question about how our system would handle encrypted data transfers at scale. And I had the answer. A complicated solution I had spent weeks developing. Alan? He didn't even know the question was coming. The phone on my desk buzzed. A message popped up from Rachel, one of the few coworkers I actually trusted. "Rachel." Meeting started. Alan's already talking like he built the entire product. Unreal. I smiled, bitter and hollow, not surprised. Another message popped up seconds later. "Rachel." "Wait." Clients asking technical questions. Uh-oh. I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms. Here it comes. Rachel. OMG, he's stalling. He doesn't know how to answer. My heartbeat slowed. Calm. Focused. Because when someone tells you you're not good enough but stands on a stage built from your work, they always forget the most important rule. If you don't know how the machine works, you can't run it. The next message from Rachel popped up so fast it nearly startled me. Rachel. Emma. It's bad. He's sweating, stumbling over his words. I stared at the screen, then exhaled slowly, like someone watching a car crash they saw coming miles away. Of course, Alan was crashing. How could he not? Dawson Tech was a hyper-security conscious firm. Every vendor who ever pitched to them faced the same dreaded question. It wasn't just a formality. It was the test. The gatekeeper. And Alan had never cared to learn how any of it worked. I glanced over at the clock. 10:14 a.m., right on schedule. My inbox pinged. Alan. Where are the scalability figures for the encryption protocol? Did you update the slides? A grin tugged at my lips. He was scrambling. Alan, again. Check your phone. I need those slides now. I didn't check my phone. Because the slides didn't exist. Not yet. Not because I forgot, but because I hadn't given them to him. 3 months ago, during a late-night prep session, Alan had stormed into the conference room, drunk on his own ego, slamming his hand on the table. Emma, details don't sell. People don't care about the back end. They care about the pitch. Leave the nerd talk out. That was the moment. The moment I realized he would never credit me. Never promote me. Never respect me. So I started preparing. Not for this meeting, but for my exit. I refreshed the chat window. Rachel. Oh my God. Mark Dawson just asked Alan to explain the failover protocol for the encrypted nodes. I covered my mouth, laughing into my palm. That was the exact question I knew would come. Rachel. Alan said, That's a great question, but let's circle back to that. Oh no. Even over text, I could feel the shift in the room. Clients hate stall tactics. It's the universal language for I have no idea what I'm talking about. Another email landed. Alan. Emma, get in here. Now I stared at it, for a long, delicious moment. The thing is, when someone tells you you're not good enough, but suddenly needs you, that's not a compliment. That's a confession. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, not because I was in a hurry, but because I wasn't. As I walked toward the conference room, heads started turning. People glanced up from behind monitors, their eyes tracking me. They felt it. The shift in the air. Some pretended to keep typing. Some didn't even bother pretending. When I pushed open the conference room door, every eye snapped toward me, including Alan's. His face was a shade I'd never seen before. Somewhere between panic, embarrassment, and sheer disbelief. Mark Dawson, the CEO of Dawson Tech, was sitting at the head of the table, arms crossed, eyebrows raised, looking unimpressed. Alan jumped up. Emma, great. Yes. She's our, technical consultant. Consultant? I bit back a laugh. Mark turned toward me, cutting Alan off mid-sentence. Are you the one who built the encryption architecture? Yes. I didn't hesitate. No modesty. No false humility. Just the truth. Mark nodded. Then maybe you can answer what Alan couldn't. The room went dead silent. Alan opened his mouth, probably to object, but Mark held up a hand. Number I asked her. I stepped forward, set my notebook on the table, and began. Our encryption uses a dual-node redundancy system with real-time failover. If one node goes down, data packets automatically reroute through an alternate secured channel without loss. We've stress-tested the system for up to 98% load without degradation. Mark leaned in. And scalability? The system's designed to horizontally scale on demand. Every new client instance triggers a mirrored security protocol deployment. No bottlenecks, no manual intervention. Silence. Then, and why wasn't this on the slides? Mark asked, glancing between me and Alan. Alan stammered. We didn't think it was relevant for the pitch. Funny, Mark said, straight-faced, because it's the only thing that matters. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mark smiled, directly at me. Thank you, Emma. That's exactly what I needed to hear. He closed his laptop with a sharp click. You'll hear from us soon. As Mark stood and shook my hand, Alan jumped in, desperate to regain control. Wait. Mark, hold on. This was a team effort. Emma just supports the strategy I set. Mark cut him off cold. No, Alan. What I saw today was a product built by someone who understands it, and a manager who doesn't. Then he turned back to me. Emma, can I get your direct contact? In case we have follow-ups. I smiled. Absolutely. Alan stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, his face drained of color. When Mark left, the room sat in a heavy, awkward silence. Alan finally spun toward me, his voice low, trembling, half anger, half panic. What the hell was that? I tilted my head, smiled just slightly. Oh, I thought I wasn't good enough. Then I turned and walked out, leaving Alan standing there like the fool he was, drowning in the mess he had created. The moment I stepped out of the conference room, I could feel it. The shift. Every pair of eyes in the open workspace pretended not to look, but they were looking. Heads dipped behind monitors just a second too late. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Fingers hovered over keyboards but didn't move. The rumor wildfire had already started. Alan had failed. And everyone knew exactly who had saved the meeting. I walked back to my desk, heart pounding. Not from nerves, but from adrenaline. From the power shift I felt in my bones. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. Rachel. Emma, people are whispering. Everyone heard what happened. You were incredible. I smiled, typing back. Me. Thanks. Let's see how this plays out. But I already knew. The dynamic in that building had just changed forever. Not even 5 minutes later, Alan stormed out of the conference room. His steps were stiff, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitching from across the floor. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. At 2:17 p.m., a meeting invite hit my inbox. Subject. Catch up. Alan's office. Urgent. I stared at it for a long second. No subject line had ever felt so heavy with panic disguised as professionalism. I clicked accept. Then stood, straightened my blazer, and walked slowly, deliberately toward his office. Every step echoed louder than it should have. When I walked in, Alan was already seated at his desk. His tie was loosened. His hair slightly disheveled, like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. A man who knew he was losing control. The door clicked shut behind me. Emma, he started, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. First of all, great work in there. Really. You pulled through when the team needed it. The team. I didn't reply. Just sat down, folded my hands neatly in my lap, and waited. Alan cleared his throat. Look, I want to be upfront with you. This morning didn't go as planned. But Mark Dawson liked what he saw. He's probably going to sign with us. Which is good. For both of us. I raised an eyebrow, but stayed silent. He shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with the quiet. I think, he continued, we should talk about your future here. I realize maybe I haven't recognized your contributions as much as I should have. There it was. The offer. The damage control. I'm prepared to offer you a promotion, Alan said, leaning forward like he was offering me the world. Senior project manager. A significant raise. And, let's say, more client-facing responsibilities moving forward. I blinked, slowly, letting the silence do the heavy lifting. It's a big step up, he added quickly, sensing the weight of my pause. You've earned it. I tilted my head. Tell me, Alan, If the client hadn't asked that technical question, if you hadn't needed me, would we be having this conversation? His jaw tightened. That's not fair, he muttered. I smiled, small, sharp. It's perfectly fair. He leaned back, exhaling hard. Look, I get it. You're upset. But we both know you belong here. You've got a future here. Don't throw that away because of one misunderstanding. I actually laughed. Misunderstanding? He winced but pushed through. I mean, look, I shouldn't have said you weren't good enough. That was out of line. I was under pressure. But we're a team. We've built a lot together. This is your place. For a brief moment, I let the silence sit between us. I looked around his office. The fake diplomas on the wall, the leadership books he never read, the empty motivational quote plaque sitting crooked on the shelf. And then it hit me like a quiet truth. I had outgrown this place. I straightened. Alan, I said softly, do you remember when you told me I wasn't good enough? He didn't answer, just stared. You were wrong. My voice was calm, steady. But thank you for saying it, because you taught me something. I stood. You taught me I never want to be in a room where someone like you has power over my future. His mouth opened, closed. He tried again. Emma, be reasonable. Look, I can even push for a director title in the next 6 months. We can fast-track it. I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for him. Almost. No, Alan, I'm not negotiating. I'm informing you. I'm done. I slid an envelope onto his desk. That's my formal resignation, effective immediately. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. You're making a mistake. I stepped toward the door. No, Alan, you did. As I walked out of his office, it felt surreal, like the air was lighter, like the walls themselves knew something was different. Coworkers pretended not to stare. Rachel didn't bother pretending. She stood up, grinning like she'd just witnessed history. You actually did it, she whispered as I passed. I smiled. Oh, Rachel, you have no idea. Because Alan thought my resignation was the end of the story. But it wasn't. It was the beginning. The next morning felt different. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to the suffocating pressure of deadlines, back-to-back meetings, or the heavy dread of being overlooked. Instead, I woke up to sunlight filtering through my window and a dozen unread messages on my phone. Most from coworkers, a few from numbers I didn't recognize. Curious, I scrolled through. The first one was from Rachel. Rachel. Emma, it's chaos here. Alan's freaking out. I grinned. Exactly as expected. Then another message popped up. Rachel. Dawson Tech called this morning. They asked for you. Directly. Alan tried to play it cool, but yeah, it didn't go well. I sat up straighter. There it was. The first ripple. Dawson Tech wasn't just our biggest prospect. They were the kind of client that, if secured, would double the company's revenue projections for the year. The kind of client the board paid attention to. And now, they were asking for me. Not the company, not Alan. Me. I didn't even have time to fully process that before my phone buzzed again. This time an email. Subject? Carter and Dawson, meeting request. From Mark Dawson. I opened it. Emma, I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. Let me know when you're available. I blinked. A collaboration? My pulse kicked up. Not out of fear, out of possibility. But it didn't stop there. As I sipped my coffee, another message arrived. This time from Greg. Greg had been the lead engineer at my old company before quitting last year. One of the smartest people I'd ever worked with. And one of the few who had seen through Alan long before anyone else. Greg. Hey, heard about what happened. Word spreads fast. Listen, a few of us have been talking. We've had enough. Thinking of leaving. You free to chat? I set the mug down. Hard. This was moving faster than even I expected. I checked LinkedIn out of pure curiosity. My notifications had exploded. New connection requests, messages from former coworkers, vendors, even competitors. Half of them congratulating me, the other half asking, "What's next?" And that's when I realized Alan's world wasn't just shaking, it was crumbling. At 11:02 a.m., Rachel called. No text, a call. That never happened unless it was urgent. I picked up. "Emma, you're not gonna believe this," she said, breathless. "Try me." Dawson Tech. Pulled out. I blinked. "What?" "Yeah, they called Alan an hour ago and said they're reconsidering. Apparently, Mark Dawson told him directly. We prefer to work with people who understand their own products." I let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, wow." "Oh, it gets better," Rachel continued. "The board is livid. Investors were counting on that deal. Alan tried to spin it like it wasn't a big deal, but everyone knows. Everyone knows it's because of you." "I didn't do anything," I said, smiling. "Exactly," Rachel replied. "And that's the best part. You didn't have to." By noon, I had 3 job offers in my inbox, one from a competitor, one from a consulting firm, and one from Dawson Tech themselves. Mark's email was short but powerful. "Emma, we were serious about collaborating. Our internal team could use someone like you in a senior leadership role. Let's talk." For a long time, I stared at the screen, because this wasn't just a job offer. This was the universe handing me back everything Alan had tried to steal. Then, as if on cue, my phone lit up with one more email. From Alan. I didn't even have to open it to know exactly what it said. I could practically hear his strained voice through the subject line. Subject? Let's talk, urgent. I tapped it open anyway. "Emma, I think we both acted emotionally. Things were said. Things were misunderstood. I don't want to lose a valuable member of the team. Let's discuss how we can move forward. I'm open to adjusting your role and responsibilities. Let's chat." I sat back in my chair, shaking my head. It was almost pathetic. The same man who told me you're not good enough was now scrambling to fix a sinking ship. I typed back, deliberately slow. "Alan, thank you for your email. However, I've moved on. Best of luck." No bitterness, no gloating. Just closure. A line drawn in permanent ink. As soon as I hit send, I took a deep breath and opened Mark Dawson's message again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. And then I typed. "Mark, I'm available this afternoon. Let's talk." Because sometimes, walking away isn't the end. It's the start of something far, far better. The video call with Mark Dawson started exactly at 2 p.m. No small talk, no corporate fluff. Just a man who knew what he wanted. And it wasn't Alan. Mark leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the skyline. His tone was cool but direct. "Emma, let's be blunt. You were the only person in that meeting who actually understood the product. Frankly, we don't work with people who fake expertise." I smiled, leaning slightly toward the camera. "That's fair." He nodded. "I'm not offering you a job." My stomach flipped for a half second, until he continued. "I'm offering you something better. I want you to lead our new in-house development division. No middle managers, no gatekeepers, full control. Build it from scratch. Build it right." I blinked. "Wait, you want me to build an entire division?" Mark grinned. "Exactly. I've had enough of outsourcing to people who don't even understand their own slides. We want our own tech, our own systems, and we want you to lead it." For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. No micromanaging, no credit stealing, no being told I was not good enough. Just trust, responsibility, ownership. "So," Mark continued, "are you in?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm in." By the end of the call, I had a signed offer in my inbox, Director of Operations and Product Development, reporting directly to the CEO. a salary nearly double what Alan had ever paid me, full benefits, equity, and most importantly, respect. The next 48 hours were a blur. Calls, paperwork, onboarding. But it didn't feel like work. It felt like building. Something mine. Something real. And I wasn't the only one thinking it. On Thursday morning, Greg called. "Heard the news," he said, no greeting needed. "Dawson's lucky. You deserve this." I grinned. "Thanks. You still thinking about leaving?" "Actually, yeah. And not just me. Sarah's done. Ben too. You were the glue holding that place together, Emma. Without you, it's unraveling." I leaned back, the wheels in my head already turning. "Well, I am hiring." Greg laughed. "No way. You serious?" "Serious." And just like that, the first pieces started falling into place. By the end of the day, I had 3 former colleagues express interest. Not because I asked, but because they asked me. Meanwhile, the updates from my old company kept rolling in. Rachel texted me that afternoon. Rachel. "Emma, it's a dumpster fire here. 2 clients dropped today. Lisa quit. Alan's been in closed-door meetings all morning with the board. It's bad." I couldn't stop the grin spreading across my face. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I wanted the truth to finally surface. For years, people like Alan climbed by stepping on others, by faking knowledge, by stealing credit. But the truth? You can't build a house on a foundation of lies. It will collapse. At 5:12 p.m., I got one more text from Rachel. "Rachel, you're gonna love this." Alan sent out a company-wide email, trying to rally the team, basically blaming everyone but himself for the mess. Classic, I rolled my eyes. Typical. Rachel. "Yep, except the board isn't buying it anymore. Investors are pissed. They're talking about replacing him." I stared at the message. Replacing him. For a second, I let that sink in. Then I realized I didn't care. I wasn't there anymore. I had a team to build, a future to focus on. Let them implode. The next morning, I walked into Dawson Tech's sleek headquarters for my first official day. The receptionist greeted me by name. "Good morning, Emma. Welcome aboard." I smiled, soaking it in. No more walking on eggshells, no more invisible ceilings, no more waiting for someone to give me permission to succeed. When I stepped into my new office, a real office with walls and windows and a door I could actually close, I felt it deep in my chest. This is mine. The sunlight hit my desk just right. My nameplate gleamed. Emma Carter, Director of Operations and Product Development. It wasn't just a title. It was a symbol of everything I'd survived, of everything I was about to build. I spent the morning reviewing project scopes, meeting the team, and onboarding. But it didn't feel like a job. It felt like purpose. And right before lunch, my assistant walked in, holding a familiar folder. "Hey, Emma. A vendor called. They said they used to work with you. They'd like to discuss transferring their contract to us." I blinked. "Wait, who?" "Dawson and Cole Consulting. One of our biggest clients from the old company." I bit back a smile. "Tell them I'll call them this afternoon." Because when you build something real, something honest, people notice. And when you treat people with respect, they follow you. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when the message popped up on my phone. From Rachel. Rachel. "Emma, you are not going to believe what just happened." I sat back, a grin already tugging at the corners of my mouth. Me. "Let me guess. Alan finally tripped over his own lies?" Rachel. "Worse. Way worse. The board just fired him. It's official." For a second, I just stared at the screen, letting those words sink in. Fired. Alan. Gone. Rachel's next messages came rapid fire. Rachel. "There was an emergency board meeting this morning. 3 more clients dropped overnight. 2 senior engineers resigned. One investor pulled out entirely. Rachel. The board tore into Alan. They asked how the Dawson deal slipped through his fingers, how the tech team fell apart, why no one had realized how fragile everything was. Rachel. And guess what? Someone leaked the fact that you were the person who saved the Dawson meeting, not Alan. That you were the one who built everything he claimed credit for. Rachel. The board flipped. They said he misrepresented internal capabilities and compromised client relationships. I could practically picture it. Alan sitting there, his face slowly draining of color as reality crashed down around him. The realization that all the years he spent climbing over others were coming back to collect. I wasn't surprised. This wasn't karma. This was consequence. My phone buzzed again. Rachel. After the meeting, they marched him out. Security badge deactivated, passwords locked. They even had IT disable his email in real time. Rachel. He's gone. I exhaled slowly, not out of relief, not out of gloating, but because something about it felt complete, a full circle. The man who once told me, "You're not good enough," was walked out of the building, powerless, jobless, reputation in shambles. But here's the thing. This story was never really about Alan. It was about what happens when you let people underestimate you for too long. It was about knowing your worth, even when others pretend not to see it. That afternoon, as if the universe was putting an exclamation mark on it all, I received an email from Dawson and Cole. Emma, we'd like to proceed with transferring our full account to Dawson Tech under your leadership. We've heard wonderful things. Let's discuss next steps. I sat back, staring at the message, unable to stop the smile from spreading. The same clients Alan always bragged about locking in were now mine. Not because I stole them, but because trust isn't something you steal. It's something you earn. The ripple effects kept coming. By the end of that week, 4 engineers, 2 project managers, and 1 senior consultant from my old company had joined my team at Dawson Tech. Not because I asked, because they asked me. Because when people see you stand up for yourself, when they see you choose dignity over desperation, they remember it. On Monday morning, a LinkedIn notification pinged. Alan had updated his status. Open to work. No title. No job. Just open to work. For a moment, I hovered over the notification, considering, wondering if I should feel something. Pity, anger, satisfaction. But I didn't. I felt nothing. Because when someone has shown you who they really are, you stop waiting for them to change. That afternoon, as I stood in the new operations wing of Dawson Tech, the one I had built, I looked around at the faces of my team. People who were talented, brilliant, often overlooked, just like I had been. Not anymore. Mark Dawson walked over, coffee in hand. Emma, he said, smiling, you've done in 3 weeks what most leaders can't do in a year. The clients are happy. The team's running like clockwork. Honestly, best decision I've made was hiring you. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, respected, valued. As the sun set over the skyline outside my window, I thought about everything that had happened. Every insult, every time Alan dismissed me, every late night I spent wondering if I was crazy for thinking I deserved more. And now I knew the truth. I wasn't the problem. I was never the problem. I was just in the wrong room. And as for Alan? Well, when you spend your career building ladders out of other people's work, eventually you fall off one.